Why do we never eat other animal eggs? Picture your breakfast this morning. 2 eggs cracked into a pan, yolk trembling in the heat. You've done this 1,000 times without a second thought. But stop for a moment and ask yourself something strange. Why this egg? Why not the egg of a robin nesting in your backyard tree? Why not the egg of a snake curled beneath your porch? Or a salmon fighting upstream? Or a turtle burying her clutch in warm sand? You have eaten exactly one kind of egg your entire life, over and over, without ever asking why the other 9,000 species of birds alone, never mind reptiles, fish, insects, and amphibians, never made it to your plate. This is the story of that missing question. The numbers nobody tells you. Here is what the average person doesn't know. Of the roughly 10,000 living bird species on Earth, humans eat the eggs of perhaps a dozen with any regularity. Chicken, duck, quail, goose, and a handful of others in specific regional cuisines. That's 1/10 of 1%. Reptiles lay eggs by the billions every year across the planet, yet only a few cultures in a few places touch them at all. Insects lay the most eggs of any group on Earth by an almost incomprehensible margin, and almost none of it reaches a human mouth as food. So the question isn't really, why do we eat chicken eggs? It's, why did we stop everywhere else? The accident of domestication. The truth is unglamorous. Chickens didn't win because their eggs tasted better than a duck's or a quail's. They won because of an accident of biology, roughly 8,000 years ago in Southeast Asia. The red jungle fowl, the wild ancestor of the modern chicken, had a genetic quirk. It could lay an egg almost every single day, regardless of season, as long as humans kept taking the eggs away. Most wild birds lay a small clutch, sit on it, and stop. Remove a jungle fowl's eggs, and her body reads it as loss, and she simply lays another. Early farmers noticed. A bird that produces protein on a near daily, predictable cycle is worth more than gold to a species that had just started living in fixed villages instead of following herds. Ducks and quail followed a similar pattern and earned smaller footholds. Nearly every other bird on Earth simply never had that trait, and so was never worth the investment of feeding, caging, and protecting. Domestication wasn't a taste test. It was an economic filter, applied over thousands of years, and only a few species passed. The ones evolution made dangerous. But availability alone doesn't explain everything. Robins nest by the millions in cities across the world, in plain sight, completely unguarded. Nobody eats a robin's egg. Why not? Part of the answer is toxicity and disease. Wild bird eggs carry a far higher risk of salmonella than the eggs of farmed poultry, whose health and diet are controlled. Wild eggs are also often protected by law. Songbird populations collapsed so badly in parts of Europe and North America in the 19th century from both egg collecting and hunting that strict protections were put in place and never lifted. Then there is a colder, more practical filter: yield. A chicken egg is a substantial package of nutrition, 50 to 60 grams of concentrated fat and protein. A robin's egg weighs about 2 grams. You would need to rob nearly 30 nests to match a single chicken egg. And you'd need to find those nests first, high in a tree, defended by parents that will dive bomb you the entire time. Evolution and economics quietly agreed. Not worth it. The taboo nobody designed, but everyone inherited. Here, the story turns from biology into something stranger: psychology. Humans build invisible categories around what counts as food, and once a category is set, it becomes almost impossible to see past it. In most Western cultures, egg quietly came to mean specifically chicken egg. Duck eggs feel exotic on a menu. Quail eggs feel like a garnish, a novelty, not a real food. Reptile eggs, insect eggs, fish eggs beyond caviar, these don't even register as edible in most people's minds. Not because they're unsafe, because they were never inside the boundary of food that culture drew around us before we were old enough to question it.
And yet, step outside that boundary and the picture flips entirely. In parts of Southeast Asia, balut, a fertilized duck egg with a partially developed embryo, is a beloved street food. In Cambodia and parts of South America, turtle and iguana eggs have been eaten for generations. Caviar, the eggs of sturgeon, is one of the most expensive foods on Earth, sold for thousands of dollars a kilogram. Proof that fish eggs were never actually off the table. They were simply reclassified by wealth and marketing as luxury rather than strange. The rule was never humans don't eat other animals' eggs. The rule was your culture decided which eggs count and then convinced you it was never a decision at all. The stakes beneath the question. This matters more than it seems. As the planet's population climbs past 8 billion and the environmental cost of large livestock keeps rising, researchers are quietly revisiting eggs we long ago wrote off. Insect eggs and larvae, gram for gram, can rival or beat chicken eggs in protein, with a fraction of the land, water, and feed. Some conservationists argue that sustainably managed harvesting of certain reptile eggs, done properly, could relieve pressure on other food systems entirely. The taboo that feels ancient and permanent to you is, in evolutionary terms, barely a blink old, and it may not survive the century. What you refuse to eat has never really been decided by your senses. It was decided for you thousands of years ago by a jungle bird's stubborn ovaries, by a handful of protective laws, and by a culture that drew a small circle around food and told you it was the whole world. Every morning you crack a shell without thinking, you are repeating a choice made by farmers who never met you, in a village that no longer exists, about a bird that no longer resembles what you know. The world is still full of eggs, in trees, in sand, in rivers, in soil, waiting outside a boundary you never actually chose. The question was never why we don't eat them. It's how much longer we'll keep believing we never could.